Bryce Greene is one of our best guests. He knows everything about what's happening in America and farther afield. You may recall his groundbreaking work, if you'll forgive the pun, on the Nord Stream 2 environmental disaster caused by the United States empire and all the lies that were told about it thereafter before it became a non-subject, a subject no longer talked about. You can talk about cows farting in a field and that being a real methane problem, but you can't talk about the blowing up of the Nord Stream 2, which released more methane into the atmosphere than have ever been released in any single event in the whole history of the planet Earth. Bryce Greene is an independent writer, political analyst, and contributor to fairness and accuracy in reporting. Wouldn't that be a fine thing, Bryce Greene? Fairness and accuracy in reporting. We'll come back to that. But let me ask you first about the visible meltdown of the Biden presidency. Is it going to melt down into nothing? Or is old Joe going to limp like a horse on its way to the glue factory to the starting line in November?
Well, it's really hard to tell. If you had asked me about 2 weeks ago, I would have had a different answer. I would have said that the Democratic Party is hell-bent on keeping this, this corpse essentially alive and keeping him walking around all the way till November. Also, they can carry out, the Israeli genocide in Gaza, and so they can carry out the proxy war in Ukraine, and so they can escalate in Taiwan. All of these things seem to be part of the Democratic Party's plan. But after the debate performance, which, everyone saw that Biden is virtually incapable of holding his own against a normal human being in the evening after he's sundowning. After they saw that, everyone in the media and in the party establishments and in the political scene writ large, they seem to suddenly wake up and realize that maybe Joe Biden might not be the man for the moment, that Joe Biden might not be as cognizant of his surroundings as his supporters claim to be. And what's really surprising about this is that these issues were pretty readily apparent, not just in the last year before the campaign started, but also in 2019, when he was primarying to get the nomination to run in 2020. The issues were clear back then. I mean, you could see videos of him rambling, of him turning and trying to shake someone's hand who wasn't there, forgetting what city he's in, and generally flubbing his words. All of that was in public view.
He confused his wife with his sister.
Precisely, and like confusing the president of Egypt with the president of Mexico. I mean, this is a confused man with his hand on a nuclear button. But everyone with a brain and integrity could have seen this in 2019, and some of us did. And we were pilloried, we were attacked, we were told, oh, well, he's not old. He's just has a stutter that he's getting over. And he used to have that as a kid, but, he got over it, but now it's coming back. Well, why is it coming back? It's coming back because his brain is turning to soup. And right now, the world is at such an inflection point that we can't really afford another incompetent leader on the world stage trying to make decisions that affect everyone. And so the Democratic Party, the media elites, and the people who really run this country, they seem to have flipped the switch. It is now okay to criticize President Biden. It is now okay to say Biden must go. You even have Democratic Party members. You have sitting congressmen saying that Joe Biden needs to go. And so all of this pressure seems to be mounting in a way that might end up with Joe Biden off the ballot in November. The Democratic National Convention has not convened yet. And so officially, Joe Biden isn't technically the nominee yet. And so the Democratic Party and the delegates that show up to the convention have the ability to choose someone else to be the nominee. Now, there's all this sorts of talk about who it's going to be. Assuming Biden leaves, people are talking about Kamala Harris. People are throwing out the name Gavin Newsom. Hey, we've even heard people throw out the name Pete Buttigieg. But the problem is, and no Democratic pundit seems to be grasping this, is that Joe Biden's issues aren't necessarily that he's old. They aren't necessarily that, he's unable to complete a sentence. The president doesn't necessarily need to do that. What people are revolting against in general is the fact that Biden represents a continuity of failed policies over the last 40 years, since the Reagan years, through Clinton, through Bush, through Obama. All of it has been neoliberal policy of gutting the middle class, gutting the public sector, increased privatization, attacking Social Security systems and social safety nets. All of that has been part of Biden's policy. And one of the crowning achievements of Biden's policy, according to him, are the wars that he's been doing. He was asked recently in an interview, and I can't recall which one, but it was one of these cover your ass interviews that they've been.
I think it was Papadopoulos.
Yeah, Stephanopoulos, I think. Yeah, I think he was saying that.
Stephanopoulos.
Yeah, he's been too busy focusing on all these wars to get a grip on his campaign and to get a feel for how to actually run the country. He's doing all of these wars rather than focusing on the issues that make America, safer, healthier, and just improve the lives of the general public. So he's been focusing on Ukraine. He's been focusing on escalating in Gaza. He's been focusing on escalating in Taiwan. Okay, well, if that's what Biden has to offer, well, what are the alternatives? Do we think that Kamala Harris is going to offer an alternative to neoliberalism and imperialism? Do we think that Gavin Newsom is going to offer an alternative to neoliberalism and imperialism? No, the only reason that these names are being brought up is because the establishment is very confident that those people will continue Biden's policies, will continue the empire's policies, the policies that have been in place, regardless of whichever side of the uniparty is in power. And so the fundamental issue with the American political system has not been addressed. And even if Biden were to be replaced, even if he were to collapse dead today, that would not solve any of the party's issues. The fact is that the Democratic Party does not represent the interest of the general public, and they only have one selling point to the public, that they're not Trump, that they can avoid a Trump presidency if they just get behind, the Democrats and vote blue no matter who, as the saying goes.
But again, we'll come to Trump in a minute, Bryce. But right. Although the smart papers have broken with Biden, the New Yorker, sections at least of the New York Times, that have doubtedly supported him until now, and although 5 Congress members, Democrats, have now called on him to go, if he digs in and says, no, I won't go, hell no, I won't go, then I take your point about the convention, but there would have to be a legal route to the convention overturning the decisions of the primary ballots. I mean, Biden was chosen in a rigged primary system, admittedly, gerrymandered one where other candidates were kept off the ballot and so on. But there still must be a legal strength to being the man who won the Democratic Party's primaries if he refuses to budge.
Well, this is actually an interesting aspect of our political system, is that the primaries actually don't functionally matter. The delegates can vote for whoever they want. They can decide for whoever they want at the Democratic National Convention. In fact, this was an issue back in 2016 and 2020 when Democratic Party elites were very concerned about a Bernie Sanders insurgent candidacy. They said that, even if he gets the maximum number of delegates from each state, there's still a layer of super delegates that are not beholden to whatever the state's primary decided. And there are many states that don't even hold their delegates to the what the primary process has been. And so the Democratic Party, they were actually sued for rigging the primaries against Bernie. And what they argued, and they argued successfully, was that they're under no obligation to listen to what the voters say. They're under no obligation to nominate the person who got the most votes in a primary because they're a private entity. The Democratic Party is not some sort of, public sector, public interest organization that's run by its by the general public who get to say in how it's out. No, it is a private entity run by a select group of people who can run it how they like. The Democratic veneer is really just that. It's designed to manufacture consent and to engineer this stasis of consensus among the public. If there was no democratic primary process, the Democratic Party could function the same way, but it'd have a harder time selling itself to the people. So if they want to kick out Biden, they can very well do so. If they want to keep Biden on, they can also do so. It's up to them, and the people have to deal with it.
Now, Joe, as I said earlier, is currently claiming to be back home in a black Baptist church. He's practically painting himself black. Kamala Harris, who used to run as America's first Indian. Sorry?
He said that in one of these many gaffes, he actually said that he was, I think, the first black woman president to a first black president. So one of those, incoherent scrambled egg sentences that he says. But continue.
He did. He did. I saw him do that. Kamala Harris, who in the beginning of her political career used to describe herself as of Indian descent, and she was spearheading the mass arrival of Indians in the American political system. She's metamorphosed into a black politician also. That seems to suggest that the black constituency is practically the only one they've got left that they can depend on. Can they depend on it?
Well, that's difficult to say. The Democratic Party has long been doing this insulting thing where they will put a black face in front of black voters and say that, well, you should be grateful. You should be grateful that you're represented in the halls of power. The policies that they're pushing, that doesn't matter. As long as they have a black face, with Obama, they said, all your problems are over. They weren't. They got Kamala Harris as a vice president of the White House. They said, all your problems are over. They weren't. They believe that black people are so simple-minded that all they need to do is see a black face on television and then they get their vote. There's a lot of time and energy put into keeping black people in that mindset. But as conditions worsen and reality becomes more undeniable, more and more people are waking up to the reality that the system, even if it has a black face on it, does not care about them and doesn't work for them. Kamala Harris, the only reason that she is vice president now is because she is a black woman who is compliant to power. Back in the 2020 election, Joe Biden explicitly said, I'm going to pick a black woman candidate. Had nothing to do with their politics, nothing to do with their policies, achievements, qualifications, or anything. They said, we want to put a black face there. That was clearly one of these public relations exercises that I've been talking about. And Kamala Harris, she was, prominent senator in California, deeply unpopular, mind you. She couldn't even win her own home state when she was running for president, but she was compliant to power. She showed herself as a prosecutor. She was willing to lock up people for dumb things. She's willing to vote for wars. She's willing to, say what the script says. She's willing to do what she's told. And so she was selected to be the vice president. Does that mean that she'll make a good president? Well, it depends on who you ask. If you ask the people of this country who, have to go to work, pay bills, pay rent, all that stuff, she'll be exactly like everyone else. But of course, if you ask the oligarchs who run this country, they'll say that she's great because she does her job. She follows rules. She follows her orders. And she has a face that allows her to weather some criticism from some liberals.
Now, let's turn to Trump. There were some signs that he was making progress, not just amongst American black people, but Latinos. In fact, quite significant progress in the Latino community. Of course, his base is white, but the kaleidoscope he's going to need to triumph would appear to be hoving into view on all the opinion polling in all of the swing battleground states. Trump's got this by a big margin. Do you think that will be the outcome?
I think that will be the outcome, and I've thought so for a long time for some of the reasons that I've talked about. The Democratic Party doesn't have a vision that they're offering the world. They don't have a utopia world that they're trying to build, that they're fighting for, that people know that if they vote for the Democrats, they'll get, a better world. They don't have that. Trump has a fake version of that, make America great again, or I guess it's keep America great, or what is it, take our country? I'm losing track. But, he's able to sell this image of strength and power to the American public because he's long been one of the most prominent con men in America. He's a carnival barker. He's able to say what's on his mind and just lie and say whatever he wants to get elected. And that has resonated with the public, especially when juxtaposed to Joe Biden, who has been deeply sedated, to say the least, for the last few years. And so while Trump's policies don't necessarily offer any significant change with the status quo, in fact, there's a very good case that Trump might be worse than Biden. I mean, you've heard of the 2025 Project. You know how lunatic right-wingers are with some of their religious theocratic beliefs that Trump enables. There's every reason to believe that Trump might be more disastrous in Israel and more disastrous in Ukraine and more disastrous in Taiwan. But the fact is that the Democrats don't seem to care. They market themselves as the antidote to Trump, and they say that if you don't vote for us, you'll get Trump. But they don't seem to care. They're not putting forth a candidate that actually has a good chance to beat Trump. And they knew this going in. They were well aware that in 2016, Bernie was the candidate to beat Trump, but they picked Hillary. In 2020, Bernie was the candidate to beat Trump, and they picked Biden. In 2024, they didn't even bother having a real primary because they just realized that everybody who could run was compliant enough, and they stepped aside and let Biden sleepwalk into the nomination. And so that is why you see Trump surge. The Trump campaign right now, all they have to do is say, I'm not Joe. I'm not Joe. Hey, your life is bad right now. Well, I'm not the president, but I can be, and I can make it better. That's an easy pitch, regardless of how horrible the man actually genuinely is.
Sounds familiar over here. Bryce Greene, as always, a tour de force. Thanks for your presence here on the Mother of All Talk Shows.